Hello and welcome to my shop. My name is Jerry and I am your host for another episode of Jewelry Deconstructed. Today we are talking about zipper seams. Now you're probably scratching your head and going, I've never heard that term in jewelry, so I'm here to help you out with it because it's not real common. Now what a zipper seam is a variation on a lapped seam for jewelry. Now if you're doing something small, you probably don't need this unless you want it for an aesthetic purpose, to change the look of the piece. So as a jeweler and a craftsman, you're familiar with what a lapped seam is. Instead of butting your pieces together, you overlap them and run your solder in here, and this creates a very large surface area for the solder to hold the pieces together. Now if you're doing a middle-sized piece like this, say for chasing or repousse, or you're raising a form like a spout for a teapot, or the body of the teapot itself, you might use a seam like this because it is a lot stronger when you're shaping and forming everything. Now, what a tab seam does, it provides even more strength. What you do is you cut little tabs into the tops on one edge of your seam metal, and this is larger than I'm going to be doing it because I want to make sure it was easy to see. And what you do is you slide your metal in there, your seam together like a lap seam, and then you take these tabs and you hammer them down. And what that does is it locks your piece together while you're soldering it, and it also provides an extra amount of security and strength when you're actually doing the work. So the work of raising or sinking or whatever you're doing. Okay, so first you want to make sure you start with a piece of annealed metal that has been cleaned. So make sure you pickle it, sand it, and make sure it's really nice and clean. Okay, after you anneal it, because doing this on non-annealed metal, yeah, it works, but you're going to give yourself like 5 times the labor. So, well, this piece is, what is this? This is about 114 millimeters wide. So divide that by 3.14, and that'll give you the idea of the piece of tubing I'm going to make here. I'm just going to do a simple non-tapered tube. Okay, and it's going to be about 63 millimeters long. So what we want to do first is, I'm going to put this off to the side here to make this first part of the zipper seam. We're going to slide this down so you can see what I'm doing. And sorry about no zoom on this, my other camera is dead and charging. So okay, now I want a seam that's about 4 millimeters, okay, which is quite large for something like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my caliper here at about 5 millimeters, because I know that when I make these tabs, actually I need this again here, you can see here, when I make this tab, this is going to have to overlay the other metal piece. This is going to overlay the other metal piece, and there's going to need to be a little bit of an extra bit of length there. So to make it 4 millimeters for the part that's laying on top of the other metal. So with this gauge, which is about what, 28? No, somewhere between 22. It's about 22 gauge. So I know that's going to ballpark be about 1 millimeter of difference of what I need. So we're going to do 5 millimeters. So we're going to make our line here and make it very nice and smooth. And don't press too hard because it is annealed metal. You don't want to like make a massive line there. Okay. And then we're just going to generally mark this where I think I want to make my tabs. So we're going to do one on each end. this is about 60, so let me call it 70. Let's put that in the middle of 70. It's easier for me. So about 35 is the center. So we'll mark it there. We'll mark it at the 2. We'll mark it at the 5. Okay, so I'm aiming for 5 tabs. Normally I'm a lot more particular about making sure everything is laid out exactly, but this is a demo, so I just want to get the idea of how it's done. Okay, so I'm going to make this a little smaller because I want the tabs to be about 4 millimeters. Okay, so we're going to do that end. And then we're going to find our 3 little marks in the middle. Okay. Now, to cut this, you can use pattern shears, jeweler shears, but these are pretty heavy and they're a little, too big for something like this. If you have a smaller set, go ahead and use them. But I do have a set of all-purpose scissors, which work extremely well. I don't know why these cut metal so well, but they always have. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut my little tabs here. Now you don't want to cut past this line. You want to cut right up to it. Okay. That's one. And you're going to have to go back and straighten these out at a future point. If you cut past your line, that's not a huge issue. Just know that you're going to have to possibly do a little extra work cleaning up after you get the soldering done. Okay. And that last one. Okay. Well, that's going to be a huge seam. Okay. So what you want to do is put the ruler over there. You want to use a rawhide mallet or a hard plastic mallet. I probably want to use brass, and you want to flatten that out. Okay. Now, what you want to do is take some pliers, which are good grip, and you want to pull up these tabs. Maybe not 90 degrees, but pretty darn close. Because you want the metal, this end, once you round it, to fit in there. Okay. Now, if I had been smart, I would have preformed my metal beforehand. But I'm not very smart, so we're going to do it afterwards. Okay, now let's get my ring mandrel here. Okay, and drink some coffee as long as I'm here. Magic bean juice. Okay. Now what you want to do is have your tabs up because you're going to be hammering those down. You want those on the outside. So don't fold it like this because, well, it makes life difficult. So. And then, and this is why you want your metal to be annealed. This 22 gauge that's hardened really doesn't like to bend very much. So, and here we go. Okay. Now you don't want perfectly round Because basically what you're trying to do at this point is bend this down enough to where you can get this overlap here. Okay. Now you want this here. Now what I have, if you notice, see, I have this part with the tabs. If you look carefully in there, you can see, let's use file, okay. You can see where this metal comes down and it's overlapping. That's your lap joint right there, okay? Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna hammer those tabs down. Okay. Now for that, you want to start with a rawhide mallet. Just want to bring them over a little bit. Okay. Then you don't want it tight because you want this to be movable, because you want to make sure this is lined up properly, and that's pretty close to lined up. Okay. And you want to make sure that's squeezed in there, because right now it can still come out when you're hammering, and you don't want that. So what you want is lock the two on the end down, and reminder, any hammer that you're using to hammer on non-ferrous metals, if it's a steel thing, it should be mirror polished, okay? Because otherwise any marks on here will end up on your metal. So okay. Now what I did is I bent the tabs down here and it's locked in. So now I'm flattening this edge here where it's up a little bit. You can see here there's a little gap. You want to hammer that down. Okay, and for that, I'll put it sideways. I'm going to use my straight peen on that. Okay. Okay, we're back. Sorry about the little delay there, but I had to go find a flat mandrel that I could use, or a flat surface I could use at my bench that I could put this around. So, because this is, I was hammering on a round mandrel, this didn't want to go flat. So, I have a piece of, this is an older file that's been smoothed out, so it doesn't hurt anything. And we're going to hammer on this. Makes it much easier. To get a nice flat, tight seam. Okay, so now our seam is pretty darn tight. Probably get a little more on a couple of these. Okay, and now we have this nice and tight. See how that looks? A little bit of work, but not a lot of cleanup. And it's twice as thick as the metal. So what we will do is, once this has been soldered and annealed, we will go through and we will hammer that flat on another tool over here. And let's move over to the soldering bench. You want to start by taking your piece here and you want to swish it around very nicely in your boric acid. It's a boric acid and alcohol solution. Roach proof, that's why this one's got a little bit of a blue tone to it instead of just white. Okay, and you want to make sure it's really coated good. Okay, close this up. Put it down below where it will not catch fire. And then you want to just use a lighter. Okay, there you go. Now what we're doing is we're burning off the alcohol and we're just leaving a coating of, if you notice, this is turning white. That's your boric acid. That's going to help prevent it from oxidizing while you're working on the seam here. So, and what we're going to do is we're going to put this against a piece of charcoal to help center the heat a little bit. Okay, and help reflect the heat back. Now which side is okay? Okay, now and that came apart a little bit, I think. Did it? Nope, it looks good. For a second there I thought this seam had come apart a little bit on the corner here, but it looks good. So I think it was just the way the light was hitting it. Okay, so we're going to lean that up just a little bit. Take my flux, and I have some little bits of hard solder. And I don't want those tweezers, I want some these should work. So, and they're in pretty rough shape. So look at my, if you need to fix your tweezers up, look at my last video about, cleaning up and adjusting your tweezers. Okay. What I'm doing is I'm taking a piece in between each of these. Where is it? I'm setting one of those in each seam, and that should be enough. It should draw down into my seam. Okay, put these over here, just to the back so it's protected, and let's pull up a chair. Okay, as opposed to just doing this standing. Okay, now if you're doing a smaller piece, you could probably use jewelry wise, you could probably use one of these little butane torches, or get the larger version. Here, it's a creme brulee torch. It's popular in kitchens. And these ones, it took a little bit of time, but I found them for like a couple, $5 at a Goodwill store. So now what we want to do is, this is just a Patterns type of flux. It's kind of a generic flux. So I want just like a little bit of flux in here. A little drop there. Okay. And what we're going to do, speaking of torches, back to that subject, me being all ADD on you today. So you can use those torches, the butane torches, for smaller items. This is really large, and you want to solder copper. You want to get in there fast and hard with the heat, and out again fast and hard, because it will oxidize very quickly. So you want to get a lot of heat in there quickly. So what I'm using is a plumber's torch. This is an mixes air here. It uses acetylene. So you want to make sure that you're getting in there fine, and make sure you follow all safety precautions with your torches. So, and I've been using this one for years. You can probably, you could probably get a fancier version nowadays. This one's got to be at least 30 years old. So okay, so turn on your gas, turn it up, and this is running at about 6. I want to run this at about 8 pounds of pressure out of my tank. So, and what you want to do is just kind of gently come in here. See how I'm just gently pressing that? And that made it run. See there? Because it heated up the flux. So what I'm doing is I'm just kind of preheating this just enough to dry out that. Oops, see how that kind of boiled a little bit there? I want to just dry this up, the flux, so it kind of locks everything in place. And we'll see how all this works. Okay, so now that this is all dried up, I can get in there with my torch and just bring it a little closer. Now, I'm assuming you already know torch work and know the 3 parts of the flame. There's like this is the brushy part where there's all the oxygen is used up out of the air here, so it's really cool. This part, you put your finger in there, you're going to get burned. That inner cone is where the gas is being burnt most efficiently, and this blue area is unburned gas. It's not burning yet. So you want to get a little bit into that middle section, because that's where your heat is. Don't come out here, you're just going to oxidize. So you want to be in here. And just heat the piece up. And aim everything. And what I'm trying to do is I'm wanting to heat up this bottom half over here, so that the solder, when it melts, will run down into the tabs. So I'm not straight here, I'm up a little bit, so I'm going to kind of aim right at the edge of the seam, or just a little below, because I want to heat up these tabs. Okay, and hopefully I'm not messing this up while I'm showing you this. So you have to bring the whole piece up to temperature at one time. Both sides of the seam have to be hot at the same time for it to run properly, for it to flow properly. And I might need to go to a bigger, torch. This is pretty big. Up to 10 pounds of pressure. There we go. That's 9 pounds. That's the operating pressure. So that's going to give me a lot more heat. Hopefully we haven't oxidized. So oh, there was the first one. The one on the end just started to go, and it just flowed. That one flowed, see that there. And we're all set. That's it. Turn this off. And because we want that to be soft, just drop that in the water. So, okay. And make sure your tank is turned off. Bleed your airline for your gas. Make sure that's off. You want both of your tank pressure and your working pressure to be 0. And then you can hit the torch back up, and that should be cold. Okay. Now if you look, I'm going to cool that, make sure it's cold. You can see the solder flowed from here down into these little tabs. So you can't see it real well, but the solder flowed nicely, and it looks like it's flowed inside as well. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take a moment, I'm going to go scrub this with some pumice and some soap and clean that up, and then we're going to go over and we're going to flatten that seam a little bit. Okay, now, if you look at our seam here, these are the tabs that we cut in. Okay, and you can see it a little better now with the solder. The solder flowed from here down around each tab. That's why you have to have them very close. Okay, and this is all nicely soldered in. So now the thing is, if you look, this seam right, if I can get it to line up properly with the camera, if you look at this part of the seam right here where it's overlapped, that's twice the gauge of this. So instead of being 24 gauge, or this is 22 gauge, it's now 22 times whatever it is, and I'm going to go measure that. So excuse me. So right now that is, oh wow, it's close to 18 gauge, so it's a lot thicker. So you can see here on the gauge, that's 18 gauge where it was 20 before, or 22. So 22 is right here. So you can see there's a big difference in the gauge. So we need this to be 22 gauge again. So what I have is my trusty tool here, which we're going to clean off because it's covered in. And I am dropping stuff off at the bottom of my shelf, so just ignore all that random noise. Okay. Now what you want to do is you want to clean off all the beeswax, which is the best rust inhibitor. And I work in a basement, so all my tools tend to rust. So, okay. Now, you want ear protection, most definitely. So, what we're going to do is we're just going to put this on the end there. Okay, so this fits on nicely. Okay. And it will fit a little looser in a minute. So what we're going to do is we're going to hammer this seam down to where it's a little thinner. Okay. Now, you don't want to use something this big. This is a 40-ounce Master Mechanic hammer. This is my forging hammer. Got a couple little marks, so it needs to be polished again. But notice, polished so that anything I hit ends up polished. If I hit this copper with those spots right there, those marks would get left in my copper. So this has to be re-cleaned. Okay. This one, it's got a couple little marks. I was using it earlier, so, but it needs cleaned too. It's not quite as shiny, but it'll work. So what we want to do is you want to hit the metal with, I'm going to use the peen part. The peen is the smaller area. Okay. I don't want to hit the metal with a peen like this, because what that's going to do is stretch the metal this way, and it's going to make this bow out. Okay. What I want it to do is to stretch this way. So I'm going to hammer it like this. Okay. you want to make sure that you're hammering in that direction. So, and I'm going to put on some hearing protection, because you should always wear hearing protection. And here we go. So. And I guess I am going to use this just kind of, because this is curved, it will automatically want to stretch it that way. So and I want to hit along this line now. I went down the center. I want to hit along this line. Now I'm going to do this line. It looks like that's gone down quite a bit. Hearing protection off. Pull this up. Oops, and that's a little bit of copper from being moist still on the inside. I guess I didn't get it as dry inside as I thought I had. Okay. Now we measure the gauge, and we're aiming for, we're aiming at 22 gauge. And there we go. 22 gauge. So now we're going to round this up a little bit. And let's see, what are we going to round that up on? I have to pull out the right mandrel for that. This up, and we're going to use this cable leg mandrel that I use for other stuff. It's a little angled, but it works really good for rounding up stuff. So, and is that showing? Yep, that's showing. Okay. Now, hitting on wood, you don't want to use anything that's going to mar the metal. So, and being annealed, it's pretty close to round to begin with. You're just kind of caressing it a little bit. Remember, this metal here has already been hardened, so it's not going to want to go as round as the rest of this, which is basically annealed. So that's getting close to round. Now, here, you can see why we call it a zipper seam. It kind of looks like a zipper. And you can leave that in there, or you can sand that down to where it's very smooth and hard to see. What I like to do is just sand this here and to leave a little bit of texture, and it looks good. So I won't polish it right now because that's a whole nother episode, but you can see where as a design element this looks really good. So, and this you could do raising, sinking, repousse, chasing on here, and that's going to hold. Chances are, if you take this down halfway, if you anneal carefully, you probably won't have a problem, but you might occasionally have to reflow a little solder in one of the joints if it does decide to come apart. But that's pretty much everything you need to know about making a zipper seam. Thank you very much. Make sure you click like and subscribe down below, and please watch my other videos, and go to my website for the blog page, which is listed right here. You can see the link right there. So thank you very much. You have a good day.